It's Gavin Seim here, and we're out of court and convicted for 3 crimes. For what? For standing up in a courtroom and demanding a judge follow the law, the Constitution. That's the state of America today. Now, I'm not surprised by this court verdict because we have failed to hold our courts accountable, but that's where we are. The result, I got 15 days, about $1,100 in fines, and a year probation. I think I can serve that with one of those little anklet things, providing I pay the provider who has an agreement with the state to rent me the anklet. It's all an extortion program, and everybody that plays the game gets a little piece of the pie. But we're standing here for justice, and it's time to stop following protocol and start standing bold and principled. When the verdict came in, the judge gave me an opportunity after the sentencing to say something like they do, and I simply said, I appeal to heaven. We're going to come back to that in just a minute. We have the persecutors, and we have the judges, and we have the people there, the bailiffs and the court clerks coming in and lying on the witness stand to hold up their evidence. Who knows what they would have thrown at me if we had not had that video. The video, in fact, that recording of it started all of this at the Chastain trial because they dragged my brother out of the room because that video was recording. Well, you know what? That video was on the table in the very same spot on the defense table, live streaming my entire trial. Now, we're exposing them, and they're pushing back, and they're following protocol and order a little better. They're not causing complete chaos in their own courtroom when people try and uphold the law, but they're still abusing. They're still pointing the finger at us after we point the finger at them and say, well, you caused the chaos and therefore you have to be punished because you're a criminal. Well, let me tell you what, I am proud to be called a criminal by these tyrants. I am proud to stand up for liberty and justice and what is moral and right because I am tired of these crooks reigning as kings and thinking they are gods in these courtrooms and in these halls of Congress and in these legislatures. We have got to stop allowing this tyranny, and we have to stand up. Now, I just want to be clear, despite the fact that we lost, our defense attorney, Stephen Pigeon, did an amazing job. You should have seen the closing arguments. In fact, some of you might have in that live stream, and hopefully I can get a video of that later because he destroyed the prosecution. This is one of Washington's top constitutional defense attorneys, and he did an amazing job. The problem is, when you have attorneys and they're defending the people that are on the right side, they're defending the people standing up for what's right, it's pretty hard to win because all the bases are loaded in this courtroom. I don't get a jury of my peers. We don't get to defend on my terms. We don't get to say the reality of how it is. We didn't even get to argue in the jury instructions the self-defense that this really was, because it was standing up in defense of the Constitution, the law, liberty, and in defense of others. That's what this is all about. It's about standing up for liberty and for our neighbors. The judge wouldn't even allow that in the jury instructions. We're in a situation where we go into a courtroom and the jury, the judge, the prosecution, and everyone who works there is being paid, controlled, and directed by the state. That's who's writing the checks. That's who's giving them the donuts. That's who's telling them, you have to obey us, to those jurors, and they don't have the courage and the principle to stand up and say, no, we're going to do what's right. Because that's what America has become. And so we go in there as the defendant or the defendant and his attorney, and we stand alone against a system where all the cards are stacked against us. We have a situation where the reason the court process is slow is because it takes time to make tyranny and despotism look like justice. When law becomes injustice, it is no longer law, it is tyranny. And that's what these courts have become. That's what's happening all over America. So what do we need to do? Let's get to the bottom line. People need to start standing up. That doesn't mean everybody going into a courtroom and making a speech to the judge and trying to open the eyes of juries or the audience or the world, but it means standing up in some way. For some people, it means standing up financially. For some people, it means going out there and being bold. It means stop making excuses. Don't try kidding yourself that this is an isolated incident. Don't try kidding yourself that you can go into these courtrooms once they really want to get you and play games with what your legal name is, or that you don't accept their jurisdiction, or this or that. Because at the end of the day, if you don't play their game, they will simply throw you in the slammer, take everything you have, and persecute you and your family. That's how the system works, because we've allowed it to work that way. Now, I mentioned earlier, when the verdict came in, that I said, I appeal to heaven. Well, just a couple minutes after the verdict comes in and the court's kind of dismissing and things are breaking up, a gentleman comes out of the audience who's in support. He walks up to the attorney with an envelope of $100 bills, and he says, I want this to go to appeal immediately. And he starts handing the attorney and talking to the attorney and helping out and handing him money so we can help push the appeal process forward. So it looks like now we're going to be going to appeal. So that's a way that we can keep standing up. But we have to keep standing up. And number two is we have to do it on principle. We have to do it morally. We have to start standing up for what is right and moral and just and godly and principled. However you believe, we have to start standing up for what is just and principled. We have to get back to the foundations of America. We have to do it with boldness. Finally, and this is a recap of all of it, we have to stop cowering, we have to stop making excuses, and we have to stop tolerating crooked judges and politicians. We have to stop pretending that these people are protecting us. They're not protecting us. They are bureaucratic terrorists. Bureaucratic terrorists should not be regarded as protectors. Stop pretending that the police and the government officials who will not stand up to their fellows, who will not stand up for what they swore to protect, and who will not stand up for justice are on our side. Start standing principled and bold against the tyranny and start shutting it down, America. And so I continue to appeal to heaven, but I will keep standing for liberty and standing for what's right. Because until we recognize that the unlawful suffering of our neighbors is as evil as if it were ourselves, we will not have liberty. I'm really at peace with it. We're through the trial phase, which is great. These officials are accountable, and you know what? I appeal to heaven. My salvation is in Christ, and if you don't believe you have that right, and I still defend your liberty and your rights and stand up for those to the last breath, but you're missing out, because that's where my strength comes from. I know who wins.